boys and girls, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of episode 3 entitled Destiny from Lucasfilms and Star Wars The Acolyte, which is currently on Disney Plus for all of your viewing pleasure. I said when I reviewed the first 2 episodes, which dropped last week, that I probably wasn't going to go week to week with the reviews, unless something changed, and something changed. I just felt like we're going to go week to week. Yeah, there's no point waiting till the very end. We're going to go week to week as it stands right now, unless something changes. But as it stands right now, we're going to roll with it. And I enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed this episode better than I enjoyed the first 2 episodes, and I actually liked the first 2 episodes. Didn't love them, but I liked them. And I said, I'm gonna give it a chance. I'll give it a chance because I've been let down so much by not just Star Wars shows on Disney Plus, but all of these shows on Disney Plus. That includes Marvel. It's been hit or miss with them, hot and cold with them, and I just got tired of it. It was wearing me down emotionally because I'm a fan of all of this IP that Disney owns, Marvel and Star Wars and all that. This is what I grew up on. So it holds a special place in my heart, as it holds a special place in all of your hearts. Otherwise, you wouldn't be caring about this review. But I was highly anticipating this show. I thought that this had potential to be something special. And so far, so good. The first 2 episodes, and I'll openly admit, they were slow. It was a slow burn, very slow. And even though it was interesting, even though I liked the story that was being told, it was just moving at a snail's pace that I was hoping and praying that the whole season didn't have this pace. That's why I made that announcement after the reviews of the first 2 episodes that I wasn't going to go week to week because I was going to be drained watching those shows. But this episode 3, it didn't have that effect. Episode 3, entitled Destiny, is an origin story, so to speak. This was more of a introduction to our main characters that we are going to be following for the remainder of the season. We already been introduced to them in the first 2 episodes, but this takes place 16 years before the events of the first 2 episodes of The Acolyte. And this is the origin of Osha and May as their children on this planet where they're being raised by a coven of witches. Now, this isn't new territory for the Star Wars franchise. Witches have been a part of this franchise. If you go back to the Clone Wars and even to Ahsoka recently, we've seen these witches who use the dark side of the Force, but they don't call it the dark side of the Force. It's more of magical elements that they abide by, but it's all the same thing. It's all linked up together using the Force, and it's explained in this episode by one of the characters. But why I would put this episode over the first 2 episodes, episode 3 has some weight to it. There is a lot of meat on this bone here. There's some emotion here. There's a lot of elements that make us connect to the characters better here, because in the first 2 episodes, okay, we get introduced to Osha, we get introduced to May, and we get introduced to Soul and all of the other Jedi and our supporting characters and whatnot, but never anything to anchor us to these characters, to follow these characters or cheer for these characters, to the point, that we understand the motivation of these characters. Now, that's not to say that episode 3 flushes all that out, because it doesn't. There's still a lot of question marks with this story going forward, because this is still a murder mystery at the end of the day. And it's even more there's even more questions after this episode, but they're good questions. But this has a lot of significance to our characters uh, on both sides of the fence here, both sides of the argument here with the Jedi and with the witches, that we get a better understanding of what world we are in. We didn't get that in the first two episodes, and it made me wonder, like, they should have just put this as the first episode. I know, you want to open up with the action and, some exciting fight sequences and some exciting chases, and you got this escape and all this other stuff that took place. But I want a story that makes sense, and I want a story that I can get behind. And this did it in this episode. We opened up with May and Osha being brought up in this coven on what is it, Brindok, I think's the name of the planet. And this is 16 years prior to the events of our main storyline that we were following. And there's a lot of witch subject matter that arises as we dive into Osha and May's past, Whereas we started off, it felt like the show was trying to find its footing. In episode 3, I think they planted their pivot foot here. I think they really found uh, how to move forward with this story. At least I hope. I hope we can get to episode 4 and all that get thrown out the window. But we really got a firm grip of the story here. At least the backstory, I should say. The writers are doing a fantastic job of answering just enough questions to keep us satisfied. Our curiosity while deepening other mysteries and presenting new ones to chew on as well. Um, Episode 1 was, why did Osha murder the Jedi, Carrie Ann Moss character? And then we find out, no, she's a twin. Okay, we solved that mystery. Now the mystery of, how is she alive? Everybody thought she was dead. She started the fire, but why is she so mad at the Jedi? There's so many questions going on. And after this episode, I had a million more. It's a million more, but good ones. Not in a way where it's frustrating, like, oh my God, what is going on? But no, this was beautifully written here, because we find out in episode 3 that these two twins, these two sisters here, are polar opposite. They're yin and yang. Osha is more of a compassionate individual. She longs to be a Jedi. She doesn't want to be a witch. Whereas May is about as toxic as can be. They're polar opposites of each other. And she wants to be a witch. She really embraces the dark side, if you will. And they're just butting heads the entire episode. They're going back and forth. They're doing that sister thing, that sibling rivalry thing, where every little thing ticks each other off, but they love each other at the end of the day. You can tell that they love each other. Of course, they are played by two actual twins or sisters here, Lauren Brady and Lee Brady. No relation to Tom, I don't think, but that's neither here nor there. But you really felt the chemistry there, I would hope. But they really did do a good job acting wise. I actually was surprised by that. It started off kind of sketchy, I mean, it's kids. It started off kind of sketchy, but as the episode went on, and there was still moments there, but you got to give them a little learning curve there. They're kids. I'm not looking for Marlon Brando. I'm not looking for Meryl Streep here. Just keep the story moving, and I think they did a good job at that. But it was good to establish that it wasn't the fire or the destruction of their world or their coven that set May off. May always was this way. And so it's like, okay, well, I can see her as being the one who set the fire, because I was asking questions last week. Did May really set the fire? Was it the Jedi that murdered all those people? Her family, That's why she wants them all dead and whatnot. So that's where I was like, okay, now we got some real twists about to come on. And with this episode, it answers that question. Yes, she indeed did set that fire. But but it's did she really kill the witches, including their mother? Because you never see that on screen. Yeah, you see them dead, you see the aftermath, but you never see what takes place. And so there's a big question mark there, and it adds on to the mystery. And I was talking over with my daughter because we're watching the show together, and she's like, "Well, yeah, she murdered everybody and blah blah blah." I'm like, "Well, that's yeah, on the surface it looks that way, but I still have question marks here because why did the Jedi, the one, the monk, the one that was meditating, and he just voluntarily took that poison because he felt so much guilt over what took place on Brondok? So why was he so guilty about that? Because he didn't do anything. At least that's the way this episode depicts him. He didn't do anything. Or did he? Because we don't see him. We don't see the other Jedi. We see Saul because Saul saved Osha. But we don't see no other Jedi, including the Wookiee. And so there's still question marks there. Uh to give you a little more backstory on these witches here, because I found this very interesting that if you watched Clone Wars and oh God, why am I blanking on the other ones? But the animated uh, uh, Star Wars shows, you know that this coven of witches, or what they're called on Clone Wars, Night Sisters, which I don't know if they're Night Sisters in the Acolyte. Maybe that's later on down the line, but it's the same thing. They're the same thing. But Darth Maul, who you may know from Clone Wars and Rebels, and also the Phantom Menace, when he was cut in half, he is a part of that. He's a part of, at least he was a part of the Night Sisters, and he was raised up by them. And one of the mothers there in this show, in episode 3, has a strong resemblance to Darth Maul. She isn't red, but she has the horns and stuff. I think it's Mother Kroll. I think that's how they pronounce the name, but it doesn't matter. But I was like, okay, that was a nice little nugget that they put in there, to remind you of that if you followed all those shows and whatnot. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't watch every single episode, but I do remember that much about it, and I like that little connection there. And this is hundreds of years before episode 1, so it ain't like we're gonna get a cameo from a baby Darth Maul. At least I don't think so. But I thought that was interesting as well. The plot moved pretty good in this episode. These are very short episodes, shorter than I would expect for a Star Wars show. I thought maybe they'd be an hour long, but they're not. They're fairly short, but they put a lot in it, especially in this one. They put a lot in it, and it moved pretty fast. It felt like an hour, but not in a bad way. Like it's like, oh my God, this is dragging. But it just felt like it was so much coming at you, and it wasn't any action here. This wasn't an action-heavy episode. This was more of a dialogue-driven episode, a character-driven episode. But very interesting. I really enjoyed this episode so far, which isn't much to gauge by, but 3 episodes. But so far, this is the best episode of the series. I hope that when we get into present time, at least the present timeline of the show, that the momentum continues on, because that was the Achilles heel of the show so far, is watching the present time action that's taking place. But I do have a negative, one glaring negative. The show is called The Acolyte, and we're 3 episodes in, and we have no earthly idea who the Acolyte is, because Osha and May are not the acolytes. The acolyte is that figure who talked to May on that, I don't know, it's not a beach, but on on that shoreline with the red saber. That's the acolyte. And so we're nowhere closer to finding out who the acolyte is and what's his motivations, why he's against the Jedi and the light side of the Force and whatnot. Now, I have theories. I, I have a couple of theories, uh, but I'm not going to spill them right now because I don't want to be told I'm wrong later on. So I'm going to keep them to myself. Just know when it's revealed, I'm just going to say, I knew it. But if I don't say anything, you know that I was wrong. But in any event, yeah, I would like to have seen something. And I know this is an origin, this episode. I know this wasn't about him or her, but it wasn't touched upon, you know? And it's not like we have 10 episodes remaining. We only have 5 episodes remaining here. And I would love to get some clues so we can, start playing that fun little game, trying to piece it together. Who is the acolyte? And so that's my only bugaboo about it. But one of my theories, I will say this. One of my theories is it's their mother. And I got that in the show. It just felt like it. Like it's the mother, who's played by Jodie Turner-Smith. I think she's the acolyte. Even though we do see her, quote unquote, dead on the floor, when when Soul was taking Osha out of that temple or whatever. But once again, we didn't see her die. So that's my theory. My other one, I only have two possibilities. It's her and the gentleman from episode 2 that's working with May, who gave her the poison and whatnot. I think he's a strong possibility because he's the only one who pinpointed the fact that May, well, that Osha wasn't May. When Osha was trying to disguise herself, well, not disguise, but pass herself off as May, and he didn't buy it. He knew it wasn't her, and he knew that she was the twin, even though May didn't even know that Osha was alive, but he wasn't shocked by it when he said it. It was like, oh, you look just like her. It wasn't anything. He wasn't shocked by that at all, which is like, wow, because everybody else was. So that's the one that's I'm leaning heavier towards him, but to really drive it home, it makes more sense story wise for it to be their mother that's doing this. So we'll see. Especially if you go by her teaching and what she was teaching them in that training session. Now that I say that, because it's all coming to me now. Now that I say that, I got to take back my negative because maybe they did touch in on the acolyte. It's starting to make sense now. Okay, I take that back. And so I'm gonna take that back with that. It all makes sense now. But yes, this was a good episode. I enjoyed this episode. I'm excited moving forward. Well, I do still have a negative. We didn't get much of the Wookiee Jedi. I wanted to see more of him because we left off at the end of episode 2, his introduction, and then we get this flashback episode, and he's in it, but he's only in it for like a couple of minutes, and he doesn't do anything. I want to see this, I want to see him do something. But I'm more than certain we'll see it before this season wraps up. But I would like to know, how are you feeling about the Acolyte thus far? I know I read all the comments online. All these people, everybody, especially from episode 1 and 2, there's some hate here, man, and I know why it's there, and I can smell it. While I was watching episode 3, I smelt the hate coming from after watching this episode, and y'all know why. It's a lot of people who are not going to rock with this show, and that's fine. It's not for everything is not for everybody. But my problem is, don't jump online and go to bad mouthing the show, bashing the show, hating the show. If you don't like the show, just don't watch the show. There are people who enjoy the show. There's a lot of movies and TV shows that I can't stand, but I don't go online and bash them, and spit all this vitriol towards it, oh, don't go see this movie. That's not for me to do. I give my recommendations here, whether I like them or not, but it's nothing political behind it. And people have gotten to the point where they politicize media, entertainment media, I should say. And it's ridiculous, man. We're talking about TV shows and movies, fantasy, fake stuff. I mean, come on, let it go. Yeah, let me get off the soapbox. That's another subject for another show. But the initial question was, how are you liking it? How are you enjoying it? Or how are you disliking it? I would love to know some intelligent reasons why. Don't just say, oh, I hate it. Give me some reasons why. We may agree. Like I said, I have some issues with the show. No show is perfect. No movie is perfect. You can dissect every little thing. So yeah, I have some issues with it, but overall, the pros outweigh the cons for me. But it may not for you. So I would love to know, what are yours? Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for this show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube and like this video if you don't mind. Also, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of episode 3 entitled Destiny, from the good folks over there at Disney Plus and Lucasfilms, the Acolyte. I want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everyone. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.